Welcome to Agency Elevated Podcast. This is John and Jeanette Lucero, your hosts for this podcast, where we educate and inform the masses on everything life insurance. If you've been looking for a place to get your education and become better informed about everything life insurance, you are at the right place. As well, we are building a massive team of licensed insurance agents to build the fastest growing life insurance agency in the nation. If you've been looking for a team to join, you are at the right place. Now sit back and enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of Agency Elevated Podcast. So glad that you're back with us today. And actually today I have a special guest with me. I'm super excited about this episode. It's not just me and Jeanette today. Actually, I have a special guest, my daughter, Montessa Lucero. She's with us today, and she's actually with me not only as my daughter, but actually as a client of Agency Elevated. So want to introduce her today. This will be a great episode to kind of share her experience on what she went through and actually becoming a client. So with that, Monty, I'd kind of turn over to you. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit, tell everybody a little bit who you are.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I'm his daughter. I'm Montessa. I'm 19 years old. I'm a business owner. I primarily work in sales and fitness as of now. But yeah, I'm also his client. Like you said, I'm a legit client.
So I was super excited about this episode. Actually, we came together once we met together and actually put together a policy for her. I just knew it'd be perfect to bring her on here. And so I actually have some questions I'm going to run through today because I don't want to miss out on any questions that we were going to talk about. So kind of the first thing that I wanted to start off with is, what made you interested in really having an appointment and finding out about life insurance and your investments?
Well, there's definitely a lot of things that made me interested. I think both you and Mom had kind of taught me about compound interest when I was younger, just the compound effect in general. And then I had also recently read a book called The Slight Edge. For those of you who have read it, it's pretty similar to the compound effect in that it talks about making slight minor changes or taking small actions can accumulate to big change. And so I definitely took that into consideration when thinking about my finances. Like, I'm starting to make money for the first time as an adult, and I don't know how to manage it, and I needed help and guidance. So that was really what encouraged me to just surrender to the fact that I don't know really much and just get the education I needed.
Awesome. I always like to remind everybody before I started today, if you're not watching us or listening to us on Spotify, definitely check it out on Spotify, because on Spotify we have video, so you can actually see my daughter. You've probably seen me already, but check us out definitely on Spotify, and we're actually now on YouTube as well, so you can check us out there. Cool. So just wanted to kind of jump into this. So, for me as a father and not just as an insurance professional, it really excites me when I get a chance to work with young women, any really young clients, young men, young women. But as a young woman, and I want to kind of hear your perspective on, why do you think that having financial literacy can be to an advantage?
There's so many reasons. I feel like definitely having financial literacy can help kind of make you equal with your peers and make finances and talking about money not so taboo, especially like in your workplace. So having those open conversations about wages and salaries, especially with your male coworkers. Unfortunately, there is still a gender wage gap. So it's important to talk about it. And it's also important to talk about it because you'll probably realize that everybody else is just as clueless as you are. And then you can kind of help lift each other up in this, So that's definitely why. Yeah,
well, it's really cool to hear you say that, because in my experience, I've been in the industry for 22 years, and I wouldn't use the word clueless, but like in every age range, nobody's really ever talked to about their finances, about insurance, about investments. It's just not a conversation that's in schools. It's not a topic. So I even find it when I'm working with people in their 40s and their 50s that they're like, I've never even heard about this stuff before. So it's really inspiring for me when I work with people of your age that are really wanting to learn early. But knowing that, what are some things that you think you could do or we could do as an industry to help more young women want to learn more about it or want to get more engaged in learning more about their financial literacy?
What can you do as an industry, or what can we do?
Both, as another young woman or somebody of your age, and also like people for myself in the industry, how can I tap into more people like yourself that really need this type of help?
Well, I certainly feel like a lot more people probably need the help than the people asking for it. But maybe they don't know where to start. And that's a big part of this all is I was like, okay, I have all these investment goals or financial goals, but I just don't even know where to start. So talking about it, reading about it, just asking my mentors or people who I see, have something figured out that I don't, just asking as much as possible, asking questions. Like I said, surrendering to the not knowing, whether it's you're 18, 19 years old or you're 45 years old, still there's always an opportunity to learn and evolve, and you're never too late, which is the biggest thing. For me, I felt this like impending doom already at 19, like, how do I not have this figured out? Like, I'm about to enter my 20s, I should know this, and I didn't. And already just learning a little bit, moment by moment has made me feel like I have better leverage on it already and more security. So talking about it, asking people, your parents or the people in your household, like, hey, what did you do? Because you'll probably learn some things about their finances that you didn't know, and the intricate parts of raising you. Like, did they take out, did they spend a lot of money on their credit cards? How did they maintain this? Because everybody seems to have figured it out. So how did they do it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think from some perspectives, there's a lot of people that figured it out, but there's a lot that haven't, and that's probably the biggest reason why Agency Elevated as a podcast came together. Is we just really felt like this is a place that we need for education.
Yeah.
Because people don't know what questions to ask or where to even go for answers. And so I think that you're onto something that's like really just bringing up the topics and having that conversation. And you mentioned, like, you talk about this in your workplace, you talk about it at home, and I think when we were talking about doing this podcast, you were finding some research and doing some studies, and you said that, I think you shared with me that women tend to talk more about their finances in the home and in the workplace than men. Why do you think that is? And from another perspective, what do you think we could do to kind of bridge that gender gap where it's talked about more, maybe in men in the workplace versus females or in home?
That's a good question. I definitely think that it's just attributed to the fact that women generally tend to talk about more vulnerable topics, and we've made that a safer space. And obviously that's a generalization, because I think times are changing and that's not true to everybody. I've definitely seen some masculine spaces that are very vulnerable, but I do feel like women have generally made it very comfortable to talk about vulnerable topics. So whether that be intimacy or finances, all of it's taboo and nothing's off the table when it's slumber party vibe between you and your girlfriends. So I would definitely say for men or masculine people who are wanting to kind of like enter this space and be more vulnerable about their finances, it's really important first to just, same thing, wave the white flag of not knowing. And I think there's also a societal pressure on guys to have it figured out. You look at like the male female role, and the woman is like the soft, nurturing homemaker. Like, she's responsible for nurturing the children. The man is supposed to be sent off into the world, figure it out, and be the breadwinner. And unfortunately, that's just, it's not what it used to be. It's not that simple. And those roles are changing. So we all need the same education and understanding on how we can provide for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think those are so many good points in there. But, and this is probably not even a question we talked about, but I was just thinking about as we're talking, like, how does this type of conversation come up with you and your girlfriends, or just you and your friend? Is it something that is a common conversation? Is it something that's starting to happen more often? Or is it really like maybe you're a step ahead of most people because you're already taking these steps? I'm just curious, as somebody that's, been through that age. I don't think when I was 19 or 20 years old, I probably carried a lot of credit card debt. I was going to college. I had no concept of any of the products that I do today or just financial literacy.
Yeah.
But what's that conversation look like between like you and your girlfriends of the same age or people that you surround yourself with? Is it something that comes up, or just curious?
Yeah, it's definitely something that comes up. I think like at first it's more joking and casual, like, oh my gosh, like I'm broke, like I spent all my money, or I can't get a control when I'm shopping, or those sorts of things. And then like when we really start to like dive into it, it's like, hey, like, do you have savings? Like, and we start to have those conversations, and that's when it kind of opens and bridges the gap. Like for me personally, as I've gotten more education on this, I'm immediately motivated to like go spread the word. Like, oh my gosh, if only everybody knew this, I could just like, I could see my friends light up when they learn more, and now they're interested, and now they're taking the steps. And it really is like a domino effect. It's like one person venturing out the uncomfortable route to say, I gotta learn more, I don't know this, I gotta get more education. And then it spreads like wildfire through your relationships and friendships, or even your partnerships too. Like I'm sharing this all with my partner, and we're in a very equal playing field learning more about our finances. So I would say that's definitely, that's part of it,
Okay. Well, something that came up for me, and I know thinking about the process that you and I went through in getting started, this the first thing she came to is, hey, Dad, I need to set up a Roth. And I need to set up a Roth. And I hear that all the time. Like, it's just probably something that a lot of people hear out in the marketplace, having a Roth IRA. And I'm definitely a proponent for it. But, as we went through the dialogue and we kind of worked through this process, we went a different route with you. And so, maybe you could share with me, what was it about the Roth that you'd heard, or why was that something that was just kind of like, hey, I have to have this?
Yeah.
How did you find out about it, and what made you kind of inspired to think, hey, that's the path I want to go?
Well, I got a lot of my early education from TikTok. So I was just literally looking up like investing on TikTok and watching TikToks of suggestions from people who have like courses and whatnot. And pretty much everything just fell back into like, you need to start a Roth. I didn't know that there was any variety. Like, that's all I knew that existed. So for me, I was like, oh, if that's the first step, then I'll take the first step. But then after meeting with you and discussing my options, I was like, thank God I didn't just blindly jump into something I was not prepared for and something that I didn't fully know the terms of. And now I at least have choice. Like, I got to have choice, which was important for me. Like, I want to choose where my money's going. I want to choose how I manage it. And I want to be conscious and aware of where it's at and how it's moving. And now I feel like I have that. I didn't feel like I had that before. I felt like, oh, this is just what I'm supposed to do, so I better just go do it. And unfortunately, I feel like that's probably the case for a lot of people who approach you that way, is like, they don't know that they have choices. So
it happens all the time. And again, to think about it, if you would have went with the Roth, it still would have been a great choice to start with. You couldn't have really gone wrong. But I think part of what we tried to do in our process, and again, tell me if I was wrong, is that we sat down, and part of the first question before we sat down was, well, what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's not even a question people ask. They just say, hey, you want a Roth? Okay, we're going to set you up with a Roth.
Yeah.
But we went through a process to figure out, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? What would you like to be able to do? What are you trying to save for? What are some of your objectives and your goals that you're trying to see? And so after we did that, I said, hey, maybe a better recommendation is we do some cash value life insurance. And that ended up being the product that you chose. And again, you spoke about it, that you felt more confident because you had a better understanding.
Yeah.
And it's a big piece of what we do in Agency Elevated, but just what should be done in the industry, and it doesn't always happen this way, is that it's education.
Yeah.
Most people don't have an idea of everything that's available out there for them, but everybody's situation is different. Your situation at 19 is going to be different than somebody's in their 40s or in their 50s. And so I would have that process with everybody I talked to. And so it was really neat to kind of see where we started and where we ended up going through that process. So
yeah, I mean, like I said, I work in fitness sales, and it's the same thing. Like, you wouldn't go to a trainer and just be like, okay, help me work out. Like, they're going to sit and talk to you and talk about your goals and what you're trying to achieve, and pay attention to how your body's different. It's the same premise with how you approach your finances. And that's what I was able to learn through this process, is that I'm so glad you did ask me about my objectives, because now I still know that a Roth is an option and something I can consider at a later point, but I know exactly what I'd be getting into and exactly what that would mean for me. And you're right, it's different for me at the age of 19 versus somebody who's maybe already in their 40s, how they're looking at their finances. So for me, it was like, I just need to start something. It can be a really small amount that's being put away, but I know that it's going to accumulate to big change. So for me, I liked having the option in the education. And I think that just like any other industry that really wants to help people and help people succeed, it should be that way. And it's a shame I didn't even know it was going to be like that. Like, I just expected you're just probably going to sign me up with something, and that was the first step. But no, we actually sat, talked about it. You showed me through all of the terms and the paperwork and everything. And I felt so much more familiar in that 30 minutes of talking. Like, everything changed for me, where I'm like, oh, I want to learn more. What's next, So yeah, I like that part of the process for sure.
Well, I can tell you from the perspective, and as being your dad, of course, I'd set up these accounts, the same similar accounts for you when you were a kid, but you never knew about it. So they've been there your whole lifetime, but to really come full circle and to have you approach me as a 19-year-old and say, hey, now I want to do this for myself. You actually own your own policy now. You actually are making your own payments. It's really empowering to be able to see that. So, as I sit here and I'm thinking about, like, speaking to our audience, and again, I don't know everybody that's in our audience. Maybe there's other parents like me. Maybe there's young people like yourself. What would you recommend if there's somebody that's either hearing for their daughter out there and saying, hey, I want to help my daughter get started, or someone like yourself? What do you think would be the best first step to help a young woman get started on a path like this?
I would say you don't have to know the first step as far as like what you need to do or how you need to be investing or what you need to open up. You don't have to know that. All you have to know is that you want to learn more, and that's it. So whether that means just scheduling a conversation with you or looking into reading more books on finances, whatever it may be, or even this is a first step. Like even listening to this and understanding the process hopefully will relieve a little bit of anxiety about approaching this. But that's really all it is like the first step is just being willing to learn and opening yourself up to opportunity. And then in that conversation, you'll discover what's next for you. But the first step really is just like, just putting yourself in the room to learn more. That's it. That's all I did too. And same thing, even though I'm your daughter, I'm still a client. The process was the same for me, where I really did schedule, okay, I need to learn more. Here's a list of my finances broke down, and I was able to actually like sit and have a discussion. And from there, then I discovered what's next for me.
It's actually kind of funny when I think back about that. We actually had to schedule an appointment with each other. We had to look at each other's calendar. But I wanted this experience to be a true client experience for you because I want you to be able to share and be able to learn from this. So, as you reflect now, and it's probably been a month or so since we got this process started for you, what are some of the biggest things that you think you gained from the process?
Oh, there's a couple major things that I gained from the process. I definitely think just the knowledge already, of course, I gained the knowledge, or at least some of it. I certainly want to seek out more, but I initiated that process of becoming more knowledgeable about my finances. So that was a huge part of it. And just empowerment. I walked away from that experience feeling so empowered and feeling so responsible for myself. And like, I felt like truly I'm doing what I should be doing at this age. Like I felt like, okay, I've done it. I hit the mark. Like there's nothing I'm missing out on. I'm not too late to something. Like I get it now and I know how to start. So that was a big part of it, is the knowledge and the empowerment. Those two were major. And then from there, I also just figured out my direction now. Like, do I want to learn more? How can I learn more? How can I share this with other people? I'm just as interested in being here on this podcast as you have reaching out to me. Like I'm excited to share. I think that this knowledge is huge, and I don't think it's as accessible as it should be, especially to, or at least from my perspective, to younger people like me, because maybe it's not in the conversation yet. We don't really think it's necessary until we hit like 25, but it certainly is a big part of this conversation. So I would say the knowledge, the empowerment, and then direction for sure.
Perfect. Well, and I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper because, the empowerment I think is such a big piece. And I think you kind of almost glazed over it. But I think that there was a big piece in that you felt empowered.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got to see it, not only because you're a client now, but because I'm your dad. And it's like, oh, hey, Dad, somebody else wants to talk to you. Somebody else wants to talk to you, because you've left the process so excited about what you learn. And again, that empowerment. So maybe you could just kind of explain how much that's impacted you on the empowerment piece, because I think that for somebody that has never got started and maybe they have some fear about, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know if I'll look stupid if I go and ask to talk to somebody. But you left this situation, this process, and you felt completely empowered, like you want to go out and talk to everybody about it.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to just kind of share a little more about that, what that felt like for you.
Great. Felt awesome. I felt like I walked away from this situation like with a new standard for how I want to approach things. I will probably not end up meeting with somebody in the future regarding my finances and not having a good experience, because I know what I want out of it now. Like the guidance that I received right off the bat, now that's the bar. I would expect that from somebody who is advising me and helping me with my finances, or just generally giving me guidance towards my future, a better future. So I certainly feel like it created a bar for me. But as far as the empowerment goes, I feel like I walked away now feeling like all of the dreams that I had already had can easily come into fruition, or I can see exactly how they're possible or potential. Whereas before it seemed a little muddled. I have the vision, but I don't necessarily know how I'm going to get there. Now I'm like, okay, I see it. I'm starting to see the pathway more and more as each day passes. And I also know that path might grow and evolve, but that's okay because I have the tools now to navigate that. And I'll find the tools because I know where to look. So. Okay.
So, I think you've shared a lot about what you got out of the experience and now where you're at on the other side. But I want you kind of to rewind and think about coming into this process.
Okay.
Not knowing what to expect. What were you thinking, or what was your expectation that you might gain in education or from this purchase when you were first stepping into it? When if you'd have said, hey, if I walk away and this is what I get, this is what I would hope for. Hopefully you got more than that, but what was your expectation of what you were going to gain from the education in your purchase?
My expectations weren't high, for sure. I think that when I initially approached all of this, I felt like a lot of fear, and it maybe showed up as like irritability or like I don't want to deal with it. Like I don't know what I'm doing and I just feel stupid. And then now my tone towards all of it has changed so much because it exceeded my expectations. But my expectation was like, I'm just going to check the box of putting money away how I'm supposed to into this particular fund, and like I was just going to do the thing that you're supposed to do at this age. And it wasn't that at all. I did not expect from this situation to feel as empowered as I did walking away from it, and also feel like, oh, I had no idea this is what I was getting into. Like, I didn't know that I was going to be able to have discussions about investing in every single realm and how I can touch this money while I'm living. Like, I thought that, this only would be for like retirement. Like, I'm just putting money away for retirement because it's what I should do. But it's not that in any way. So
yeah. It's awesome. So, as we think about this and we start to kind of wrap up our conversation today, as we think about this, and again, we don't know who the audience out there, and I want, everybody that gets a chance to listen, our main goal here is just to help educate people, help people to feel more confident, to at least ask the questions.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, from the perspective being a 19-year-old young woman, what advice would you give to somebody that's either listening to this today or maybe runs across it with their parents? What advice would you give to that person that's looking to get started, either in the process or just wants to learn? What would you tell them?
I would say, don't be afraid. And like you said this a couple minutes ago, but it really stuck with me. Don't be afraid of what you don't know. That's really what it comes down to, is don't fear it, because everybody at one point has to be a student to this process. And I'm still very much a student in a lot of ways. Even though you're guiding others, you're also learning and evolving. And that's what you want from a good teacher, is somebody who's still learning and evolving with the times. So don't be afraid to just surrender to the process. Start as a beginner. One day, yes, you'll look back and be like, wow, I really mastered this. Like, how did I come so full circle? But that moment might not happen immediately. So you'll have to be at least a little bit willing to just like start at ground zero. And I, we said that we're addressing somebody my age or a young woman, but this goes for everybody. And I know you know this. You see clients of all different ages and demographics. So whoever you are, don't be afraid to start at ground zero.
Yeah. And I also think one thing you touched on, and I think that this will give a lot of people a relief. I've been in this business for 22 years, and I'm still not a master, because the marketplace is always changing. So I think that the best advice we can give for myself or other people is be a constant learner. Be someone that's open to learn about whatever's out there, get education. But I also tell people all the time, require and request it from the people you work with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in this industry that don't do education, don't help people be informed. And I think that's the one thing I would tell people to walk away from in this conversation is know what you're going into with the expectation that you're there to learn and to understand the process. If you don't walk away from that process learning, then it's probably not the right person to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that luckily I didn't have that experience where I felt like I had to reevaluate. But certainly if I felt like I hadn't gotten the education, I would not feel secure just, sending off a portion of my paycheck every month, not even knowing what that means or where that's going. It would only create more anxiety for me. So now I've had a completely different experience. But yeah, certainly like request and require that you're given clarity and confirmation with what you're doing with your money.
Awesome. So when we first started to put this concept together, we kind of went through some ideas. Most of the questions were not real familiar, weren't a shock to you. We kind of talked through this process. But this last kind of topic or question came up in the last few days. And so I wanted to share this one with you and just kind of, see, what the thought was about it. But you came to me and to your mom recently and said, I think I want to get licensed in life insurance now. So is that true that you actually wanted to do that? And did that come out of this process? And what really inspired you to say, hey, I want to go out and get my own life insurance license now, and I want to maybe pursue this as an opportunity?
Well, I mean, like I had said a little bit earlier in the podcast, I still work in fitness sales. And with that, I'm taught that everybody needs to move their body. And that's true. Everybody needs to move their body. Everybody needs fitness. So there's a demand there. But what I've learned through this process is that everybody needs life insurance. Whether they know it or they don't know it, there's certainly a demand for it. And so being the person to facilitate that and share that is a gift. Being able to educate people in that, it's something that I can do with good intent. And I definitely feel like I could succeed in. So yes, I'm definitely getting licensed. But alternatively, I also think personally, it will help me become more well-rounded myself with my finances and be able to share with even just like my peers or my sister or my partner everything that I'm learning in the process of getting licensed. And I love learning new things. Like I love being a student, whether it's this or something else. I'm so ready to start knowing nothing and come out of the process at the end being like, oh my gosh, Dad, let me share with you what I learned. And let me help you sign up for something, So that's going to be like a really big landmark for me at the end of this. But yes, I definitely was encouraged through this process to want to go get licensed because I was like, wait, if I have all these options, imagine how well-rounded and knowledgeable I'd be being on your end of the table and getting to teach myself about all these different things that I could open up or the ways that I could, move around my finances. So yes.
Well, I could tell you as a dad and also somebody in the industry, I'm super excited. I'm also excited because I know your partner's actually decided he wants to join you in this process as well. So it's just super excited for me to see people of your age learning what you're learning, but also seeing that there is such a big need in this market for that. So it's super exciting for me. One thing I didn't share when we started this episode, and it makes me extremely proud, I had to say this on this podcast, you were the first guest. Outside of it being
I didn't know that.
Jeanette and I running this together, you are the first guest to be on here. So I'm honored that you are my first guest, not only as my client, but also as my daughter, and to share your experience. So as we wrap up today, I want to kind of turn over to you and any final words you want to share with our audience about this process or just anything of this experience.
Well, I'm certainly also honored to be here. I did not know that I was the first guest, but that's pretty cool. And I hope to maybe be back in the future once I've finished getting my education to see if there's more I can share. But yeah, I would say same thing that we've shared throughout this whole podcast is don't be scared of what you don't know. And hopefully for the viewers that are watching this encourages you to just learn more, whether it's, you're my age or you're much older or somewhere in between. I feel like this gives a good duality to just show that, no matter where you're at in your life, there's always an opportunity to learn more. And I'm still certainly learning more and he's learning more. So this is just like a huge initiation into learning more, and hopefully you feel the same. But I'm very appreciative of you inviting me on and being here. And like I said, I hope to be back. So
well, I'm so glad and honored that you're here. Thank you for coming in today and being with us. We're actually filming the day after my birthday when this is actually getting filmed. Probably get out before the end of the year, maybe the first of the year. So thank you guys for being here. That's all we have for you today, and we'll be back with you on our next episode.